Removing the background from an image, how complicated could it be? Nowadays, there are hundreds of websites that allow you to do it, but they all have a usage limit. What if I told you that you can do it unlimited, for free, and directly from your own applications, thanks to a Microsoft Azure API? In this video, I'll show you how to take advantage of this technology to integrate unlimited background removal into a Blazor application from scratch. Let's get started. Hello, how are you? Welcome to a new video on this channel. My name is Hector Perez, and in this video, we will analyze an Azure service currently in its preview version, which allows us to remove the background from an image. We can see on the descriptive page that this service essentially allows us to create a layer that enables us to remove the background of an object, either to obtain the image or the background we've removed from the image. This can be integrated into our applications or workflows, like generating a new background through artificial intelligence and placing it on a user-chosen image. I find this service quite interesting. If we compare it with other existing services today, an external service, like Remove Background, this service allows us to remove the background from the web itself, but also has an API service. The problem with this service is that its prices are somewhat high. For example, it charges 90 cents for each image from which we basically remove the background. There are different types of subscriptions, different packages we could purchase to do something similar. We see that prices decrease, but the total amount increases as we acquire new or different plans. The interesting part is that the Azure service using this calculator shows that the service is from Azure AI Vision. If we wanted to use the image analysis service, the category where the background removal service is located, we see that 5,000 free transactions are available per month. This is not just once, but renews monthly, allowing for 5,000 transactions per month, ideal if you don't have many workloads. We have a rate of 20 transcriptions per minute, or 20 operations per minute. It's a very flexible service, and like I said, you can use it in your workflows almost for free if you don't use it intensively. Here's a description of what this service is. We will see how to use the service as part of our applications. If we go to the tutorial available as part of Azure, we see some prerequisites we need to meet to use the service. In this case, we need to create a vision resource and obtain the key and the endpoint URL. Here, we have different sections of this tutorial showing, for example, how we can authenticate against this service. It is very important to note that this service currently does not have a NuGet package, for example, for use in our applications. Here is a note indicating that this service is not available through any SDK, so we must use a direct REST API call to use it. That's what we will see how to do today. So we will see how to use this service and integrate it into a Blazor application. The first thing we need to do is go to the Azure portal, which I have open here. As part of the search, I entered the term vision. We see many results, but what we are interested in is the one that says computer vision. So I will create a new service of this type. We will use any available subscription we have. I will give it a name, for example, Vision or VG. Removal demo. I will click OK. This will be the resource group. Next, we need to select the region. There are some regions where this service is available. I will leave the default selected. For the resource name, I will enter BG Removal Demo to see if it's available. We see it's available. Here's the important part, selecting the level for this model or service you want to use. You can see that in my case, I have this note indicating that I've already used the free resource or level provided monthly. We can't create more than one free resource for the account or subscription you're using. So, since I've already used the resource with the free level, I can't use it again. Therefore, I'm going to select a different level, which does have a cost, but it's just for demonstration purposes. Then I click on Review plus Create. Here you also need to click on this checkbox to avoid any issues. I click on Review Create. Let's click on Create once the validation has been checked. While the resource deployment starts, I'll go to Visual Studio. I've previously created a new project. This project is completely new. I haven't changed anything. What we'll do as part of this project is, in the Components section, I have a folder here called Pages. I'll click on Add, then New Razor Component. I'll name this component, for example, BG Remover. Okay, now we have our new page. I'll start placing the code so you don't see me coding everything. Once I've done this, I'll assign this component as the main page component to avoid conflicts with the home component. I'll specify a route for this component, indicating that it will be the main component we want to display immediately once the application is deployed. The first thing we'll do is create the main section of our application. Here I am using different Bootstrap classes to make the design of my application look nice. I have a main container. I have a div with a class type cart. This section I'm defining is for the image where we will remove the background. Here I have an h1 tag to show the application title with some additional classes. I also have this main section, which is the image container. First, I center the elements, add an ID for this class, and include an icon and text to instruct the user to click the button we will add next to upload an image. Let's start the application to see how it looks. Ready, here it is. It looks quite good, but it could look better by applying some styles. So I stop running the application. I will indicate that I want to modify the styles through this www root folder. Next, I click on app.css and will paste some styles I have prepared. I will replace the tag, or rather the HTML embody style. From here, I will paste the content. This is a set of different styles to make our application look better. So once we launch the application, we can see that these new styles are applied, giving our application a better appearance. The next step is to define the button section that will execute some user action. So we will stop the application, return to our component, and define a second section at the image container level. Remember, this div is the image container. Next, I will add a section specifying a couple of buttons. The first one allows me to upload an image. The second one allows me to remove the image background. With this, let's start the application once again. We already have these two buttons that look quite nice. Now, let's get to the fun part, which is implementing this service. The first step we need to achieve is to be able to upload a file as part of the graphical interface to display it in this gray section. If you've worked with Blazor before, you probably know there's a component called input file that allows us to upload files. However, it doesn't look very good or well integrated into our application. I'll show it to you below. I'll stop the application execution. I'll come to the section before this first button. Here I have an input file. I have some properties that I've assigned. I'll start the execution, and this is to show you how this component looks by default. Okay, you can see that we already have the component as part of the graphical interface, but as I said before, it doesn't look very good. Ideally, we would want this functionality so that when you click the blue button, this menu or image explorer opens to select an image and display it to the user as part of the graphical interface. How can we achieve this? Well, by doing a little trick. First, I'll assign to the ref property as part of the input file. Here I have that res. I'll create a reference to maintain some kind of reference to this control. I will also assign a class to completely hide this input file. Next, let's go to the code section that we haven't touched so far. Here, I'll define a field of the input file type, which will be the control reference called FilePicker. And I also have a method called clickUpload that will execute some JavaScript code, specifically this identifier called triggerClick. And I'll pass in the HTML element of the FilePicker. To avoid this current red error, we need to go to the section for defining different references. Here, I will specify that I want to inject a reference of IJS runtime, called JS runtime. I also want the type of render mode equal to interactive server to enable some functionality as part of this page. Now, in the section we defined earlier, we indicate that we want to use or execute a script section from our code that we have as part of the project definition. However, we currently do not have any JavaScript code as part of the graphical interface. So below this second button, I will specify a script tag, and inside I will indicate window.triggerClick is equal to Alt. This will define or execute the click action of the element. That is, what I want to achieve with this is to click or simulate a click on some element received as part of this script functionality. So what will really happen is that when this method, clip_upload button, is executed, this functionality will fire, passing the reference of the file upload, specifically the HTML control. This will cause a click to execute, allowing the user to see this window to select an element or image as part of their Windows Explorer. Before running this application, we also need to modify the first button to invoke this functionality we defined earlier. We do this through this first button, then we define an onClick equal to the method reference. With this change, we will start running the application to ensure everything works correctly. We press the button, and you can see that we can now correctly select one of the images. The next step is to display the selected image as part of the graphical interface. To do this, we will modify the input file. This is so we can perform an action once we select the file. So as part of the input file, we will add onChange to indicate a change and define a method called uploadImage. We return to the C# code section and define this event handler called uploadImage, which receives input file changed event args. To maintain some state as part of our component, I will define a couple of fields below input file. The first field will be a Boolean type called isUploading, set to false. The second will be an int type called uploadProgress to indicate current progress in case we want to display the progress to the user. This isUploading variable will help us specify if the service is currently running or if a file is being uploaded or not by the system. Once we've defined these two fields, we will use them within this method to set the corresponding values, indicating the start and end of the file upload action. Next, we need to read the image we receive as part of the control. So I will define a byte array called ImageBuffer, which will store the image in byte format. And to read the file within these sections of code, I will specify that I want to read the file as part of the control. If this file is not null, meaning the user has selected a file. Next, we specify the size of this buffer using newByte. Finally, we will read the file and store the result in ImageBuffer. This will be used for making the service call later. However, we cannot show a byte array to the user. To solve this, we will create a new field of type string called ImageData, which will display the image to the user in the graphical interface. After reading the string, we will set ImageData to a specific format to display the information in the specific control. However, in our HTML code, we do not have an image tag to bind the image we have read. To resolve this issue, we need to work with ImageContainer to only show certain tags if the user has not selected an image. Otherwise, we will show an img tag to display the image. How do we do this? I will replace the content inside ImageContainer. I will then paste this section of code. What I'm saying here is that if the variable ImageData is null, I'll display the initial form so that the user can see the gray section indicating they can upload a new image or click the button to upload a new image. Otherwise, if the user has already selected an image and we have information in ImageData, I will show an img tag. Link to ImageData. Here, I added some additional options for better appearance. I will also specify that if an image is being uploaded, I want to show a different div with a progress bar. With these changes made, let's test the application once more to ensure it works correctly. I click on the button and select one of the images. Perfect, we have the image with which we will work to remove the background. Now we need to implement the background removal. How do we do this? We'll go to the section where we define the buttons and modify the second button to handle the background removal. What are we going to do? I'll assign a new event called onClick that is linked to remove background. We haven't created this method yet, so I'll go to the code section and define it here. We now have our remove background method. The documentation indicates how the URL invocation to the service should be formed. In the section that says Authenticating against the service, we see that we need to form this URL from the endpoint created as part of the Azure service. So we will take the Azure assigned endpoint and add this string to access the specific service. How do we do this? As part of my project, I will create a new class in the root of the project. You can do it wherever you prefer. I will call this class Constants. In this class, I will replace the code and define an endpoint and a subscription key. To do this, I'll go back to the Azure service we created at the beginning. Let's go to the resource. We have the section for resource management, keys, and endpoint. I'll copy the endpoint and paste it as part of the string I defined earlier. Here, I'll remove the last slash to avoid problems, or rather to form this URL as Azure requires. I will also copy the key, key 1. I'll replace this key after finishing the video, so it will no longer be valid. We have defined the endpoint and the subscription key. With these two pieces of data, let's return to the component. We need to create this URL that we see on the screen. What I basically do here is take the endpoint I previously placed and simply add the entire URL definition we saw earlier. A key point here is that we specify the mode, which in this case is background removal, meaning we are going to remove the background from the image. Next, once we have defined this URL, we will create the request. We're going to do this with this section of code. We will create a request that will be of type HTTP request message, indicating that it will be a POST request. We will also pass the URL that we have built. As part of the header, we will add the subscription key. And as part of the content, we will create a new byte array content with the image buffer, which is the byte array that we previously obtained from the image the user selected. Finally, we indicate that we want a content type equal to new media type header value. We need to import the namespace system.net.htp.headers for this to work correctly. Here, we specify that we want an application/octet stream. The next step is to send this request. For this to work correctly, we need to inject an instance of HTTP client through this line we see here. Let's return to our method. The first thing we will do is create a variable called response, which is of type HTTP response message. It will be equal to await HTTP client.send async of the request. Then we will validate the response through a snippet I have previously created. Here, we basically check if the request, or rather, the response was correct. So we will obtain the content of the processed image through response.content.read as byte array async. Next, we will process that set of bytes. We will convert it into a base64 string using convert.to-base64 string of processed image. Finally, we will set image data to this definition to show the user the processed image. In case of any error, we will just show the user an error in the console, indicating the processing failed. With this ready, before running the application, we need to quickly go to program.cs. This is because we need to add the addHTTP client method to the services, as shown on screen. With these changes made and our component ready, let's run the application to see if everything works correctly. We click on the button and select, for example, this image of the robot. We click on Remove Background. You can see that we correctly removed the background from the image, leaving only the image without the background. Let's try another image. For example, this one of the dog. Let's remove the background once more. Once again, we successfully remove the background. This is how you can integrate these types of services into your applications. Finally, I previously mentioned that we were using the background removal mode in the URL, but we can also use the mode called foreground matting. This mode gives us the opposite of the object, meaning the background that was removed in the test images. Let's quickly test this mode. Let's select one of the images. For example, this cup. With this method or mode, you can see we get the entire background, everything that doesn't involve the object, to perform some kind of further processing. So this is how you can use this API in a simple way as part of your applications. You can use it in any type of application since it is an API service. And it works quite well. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want to learn more about these types of services, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and don't forget to share it. See you in the next video.